So thinking happens to them. And then the next evolutionary step for humanity is the transcendence of thinking. It's an incredible shift in consciousness that will, of course, manifest when a sufficient number of humans have gone through this incredible shift in consciousness. The world that they create, of course, will look very different from the world that is created by humans who are completely identified with thinking. In other words, the world that is created by the egoic mind in its personal and collective aspect. Needless to say, the collective aspect of the egoic mind is even more insane than the personal aspect of the collective mind. So that's the world we create. I can't help it. Sometimes good intentions arise, and that's fine in humans who are still obsessed with their thought, possessed by their thought, egoically dominated. But they can see, well, we want to do something good. But they haven't overlooked the basic dysfunction in the human psyche, which is involuntary and compulsive and conditioned thinking. There's been no transcendence of thought. And then if you say, I want to change the world, you can see what's wrong with the world, but you cannot see the deep causes of why these things that are wrong with the world. You see the surface manifestations of what's wrong with the world and want to change things on the surface manifestations. For example, in early 20th century and late 19th century, there was the arising of people became very much aware of the terrible injustices, and of course there was the arriving of industrial revolution started in England, and there was terrible, the lower working classes were in a terrible condition, and so they can see, yes, there's something wrong here. And so certain theories arose that looked very good on the surface. We need to have a fairer society. These people are being exploited, and those are the ones who exploit. Communism, the ideas started growing. It sounds wonderful on the surface. We're going to change the world. But there's a very wise proverb, of course, that you're all familiar with, about the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And then finally, when the theory was put into practice, Russia, China, it didn't turn out so well. The intentions were good initially, I suppose, to a large extent, perhaps not 100% good, but they were good. And yet they created hell for millions. They created also, again, huge inequality between the people on top and all the others. And millions of people died because in order to bring about a better world, according to your theory, you had to kill a few million first. So if you overlook that there's a fundamental dysfunction in the human psyche, whatever plan you have to implement changes, honestly, I'm not saying don't do anything until you're totally enlightened. No, you're already relatively conscious, so you can participate, take conscious action, that's fine. Always knowing that the fundamental change is in human consciousness, and you need to embody that change while you take action. The transcendence of thinking means the transcendence of the egoic mind. It means that you are able to spend part of your time relatively free of compulsive thinking, certainly free of self-serving thinking and destructive thinking that continuously creates unhappiness for yourself and the people around you. How many people live the compulsive narrative in your mind that for many people is very negative, constantly critical, constantly complaining, never at ease with what is. There's always something wrong, fault finding, because the ego grows through the constant opposition, constant antagonism, never at ease, always looking for the next thing to complain about. And it strengthens the egoic self. The more you complain, offended is a new version these days. It's very popular on the internet. I'm very, very offended. Outrageous. How dare you? There are thousands or hundreds of thousands who go on every day, they look on their screen waiting for the next thing to be offended by. And the ego loves it. And for many of them, it's the only way they can inflate their ego, by sitting on the screen and sending out tweets. The transcendence of thinking is not any kind of regressive movement. We are not regressing to the state of somebody whose mind is relatively undeveloped and who does not have a problem with egoic thinking because there's very little going on in their minds. What used to be called, before it became politically incorrect, idiot or fool. The fool was, they were always, you could see happy fools. They don't, there's not enough thinking to make them unhappy, so they are below egoic thinking. In medieval times, every village had at least one village idiot or fool, and normal was accepted, essential part of the community. And even the royal courts had a fool, a very important figure, although that figure probably was just pretending to be a fool. And that was one of the most, sometimes very influential position in the royal court, but also one of the most dangerous jobs you could have, because you could lose your head at any moment. But only the fool was able to tell the king or queen what was wrong, by making it into a funny story. But the fool is more deeply connected, as we know from mythology. The fool is more deeply connected with the source still, hasn't gone as far out as a normally developed human. He's more simple. The fool, for example, relatively speaking, is a simpleton. It's like the Hobbit in Lord of the Rings. The Hobbit is a simple guy, doesn't think in complex terms, loves the simple things of life, loves eating and enjoyment. But why the fool has to go on this important mission that nobody else can carry out? That's a mythological motive. That's often the case, because the fool has a connectedness still with source that the more developed humans don't have. Similar motive in Forrest Gump, the movie. The fool does great things, this guy, Forrest Gump, because and life always supports him. If you watch that movie again, he saves people in the war, he does heroic things, but he doesn't claim credit because he doesn't have much of an ego yet. And all his life gives him the next thing and the next thing, supports him. But we don't want to go there. When I say cessation of thinking, I'm not talking about regressing to the stage that is the pre-thinking stage of humanity. I'm thinking about rising above, pointing to the possibility of rising above thinking. So you stop thinking, which is normally associated with diminishment of consciousness, and transcendence of thinking is an intensification of consciousness, turning up the light. This is why the term attention and alertness, those terms are extremely important. They're also used in Zen very frequently. The Zen teachings could be described, if you wanted to summarize Zen, it would you can just say simple things like pay attention. There was one Zen teacher who would, whenever they asked him a question to explain Zen, he became quite famous. He would always raise his finger. Please explain Zen to us. What is Zen? I haven't quite understood yet. He was calling people to attention. Now, I will ring this bell and I'll ask you to follow the sound with your attention. So after ringing the bell, the sound will go on for quite a while. Just follow the sound until you can't hear anything anymore, and then I'll ring it again. And you may notice, in order to still perceive the sound as it gradually subsides, you need to become more alert. The fainter the sound is, the more alert you need to still be aware of it. So the alertness, as the sound gradually subsides, the alertness increases. So you go, at first it's easy, the sound is there, and then it subsides, and you need to be more attentive, listen more acutely. And now I will ring it again. Follow the sound with your attention, and when you can no longer hear the sound, see what is left when the object of your conscious attention, which was the sound, disappears, and what is left is the pure attention itself. Let's do this. So as the sound subsides, silence remains. The silence that was there before the sound started, and you become aware of the silence. But the silence is the absence of sound, so you're really becoming aware of nothing. silence is the absence of sound. So you're becoming aware of nothing. That seemed almost impossible. But it is possible, because really what remains is awareness itself. The awareness that was there, that enabled you to listen. Well, you are the awareness that was listening to the sound. And when the object that arose in the awareness disappears, what remains is the awareness itself. So to follow the sound with your attention to its death, because the sound dies in the end, the form that was there, the form, which is in this case, one could say a sound is a form too, auditory formation. The form dies. What remains when the form dies? Just, you can't really name it because it's not an object. Only objects can be named. But we name it anyway. Consciousness remains. Your attention remains, whatever you want to call it. Pure awareness remains. And you know that pure awareness remains because you are it. You become aware of awareness. One more time. Problem solving is sometimes necessary in life because problems crop up all the time. Although I prefer not to call them problems, but that's a word that is mostly applied to situations that need some kind of response or action. Challenges is another word. It's important to practice accessing non-conceptual intelligence before you apply, and even while you apply your analytical mind, so that you approach the problem both with the non-conceptual intelligence and with the analytical mind that looks at a situation, can divide up, for example, a complex situation into, for example, possible steps that I can take to solve the situation. 1, 2, 3, 4. Course of action, you think about it, you focused thought, analyze, look at the possibilities, but fluctuate between, this is quite an art, between thinking about it, applying focused thought, which is different from compulsive overthinking, such as happens when you are worried and so on, to apply focused thought, but to really skillfully and effectively apply focused thought, you need to have access to the non-conceptual intelligence in you that is beyond thought. So there's a continuous stepping back out of thinking into where you take in the totality of a situation without breaking it down, where you look at the situation without any verbalization or conceptualization, just being very alert and very still, and you look at it, look not necessarily visually hold it in your awareness as a totality and then just become still. Even let go for a moment of the entire situation, just become still, alert and still. And then an answer may come out of that, or as you continue to, there could be one answer that solves the whole thing, or you may continue to apply thought after that. And then perhaps again step back into still, alert stillness, and then apply thought if thought is called for. And there's so much intelligence in you that is not accessed, potential intelligence. It's all this huge realm of non-conceptual intelligence that arises out of the unconditioned consciousness. So, and most people move only within the conditioned, and they try to solve all their life's problems with the very same instrument that in many cases has created the problems. Because many of your problems, without you knowing it, are actually created by unconscious use of the mind, or rather the mind doing what it does. You are not using it, it's using you. You're mistaking the mind for who you are. So that's a huge set of problems in your life comes from that dimension. And if you are able to bring awareness into that dimension so that your mind creates as few problems as possible, or perhaps even no problems at all anymore, then the mind can be left for solving problems. And what are those problems? Those are not the problems that are generated by the mind, but the problems that come to you seemingly from the external world, in the form of situations you encounter, in the form of things going wrong, so to speak, challenging people, very common source of problems. But again, very important to differentiate between, is this really a problem, or am I contributing to it being a problem? Am I contributing all of it? If I did not argue with the isness of this moment, would there be a problem? No. So there would still be a challenge, perhaps, to deal with, yes. Not a problem. It's sometimes not easy to tell the difference between, is this something that's actually mind-created, or is it out there now? If you arrive home and your house has collapsed in an earthquake, that is clearly, perhaps on the very deep level, it's created by your mind too, but we're not going there right now. It would be the dream of your particular incarnation would have created that, but we don't need to go there. On the level that we're dealing with it now is to say, your house that has collapsed in an earthquake, you did not create it. Although many New Age people will tell you, why did you create that? What? Yeah, if you experienced it, you must have created it. I never say that, although there are different levels of truth, so one does not invalidate the other. I usually don't go there because I would lose, not that I mind, but I don't want to lose you, because it's important for you. Your awakening, I'm happy to lose you when you don't need me anymore, which hopefully will be very soon, but the mind, my mind suddenly stopped. Very weird thing, the mind, very weird. But when it suddenly stops, that's a good thing. If you're okay with it. It's not a good thing if you think, oh, that shouldn't have happened. So the mind, let's see, start again. The different levels of truth, at a deeper or higher level, of course, it's true to say whatever, there's a correspondence between inner and outer, and whatever it is that you experience is part of your particular consciousness and so on. But I rarely say, you created this, if it's a bad experience, because your mind would suddenly say, no, that's not true, and then you wouldn't be hearing the rest that I'm saying, which may be much more important than to say you created this. I'm more interested in you waking up into awareness than believing in a particular perspective. Whatever perspective you need will arise from within you. Whatever perspective you want to approach reality through will arise from within you. I don't want you to adopt a particular perspective. And in order not to generate resistance in you, I never really say that you created it if it's something bad. But I do say, accept this moment and whatever arises in this moment as if you had created it. No, that's more acceptable. And so as the adult builds up identifications that form the identity. And unfortunately, it's never quite enough. There's always something missing, and quite often it is painful to compare yourself to others. Do I have more or less than the others? So the ego is to do with what I can do, how I look, what I have, my possessions, abilities, playing an instrument, sports, good at this, good at that, whatever it may be. For a long time I struggled with an identity because I had an unhappy sense of identity. I couldn't identify with possessions because my parents didn't have any possessions, or just basic ones, and I didn't have any. I couldn't identify with a great, strong, good-looking body. I didn't have that. So I was struggling. I felt diminished. Let's say compared to others, I felt diminished. It's very painful. And so after many years, I suddenly realized, I got it. I know what I can do. I can be more knowledgeable than others. I can read books, and then I can talk about these books intelligently, and I can show others that I know more than they do. It worked. But it didn't make me happy. I was still very insecure and basically unhappy, trying to show off what a great intellectual I was. Dropping names of famous authors. I just dropped Kafka, but that was for another reason. That was not for egoic reasons, I can assure you. And so you live in a precarious way, feeling my identity is not complete yet. I need something. There's something missing. That's a very fundamental feeling for humans who are trapped in their own ego. There is something missing. There's something not right. And so they are seeking, and they seeking to add something to who I am or who I think I am. It's always conceptual. And so the ego also needs boundaries. The ego needs a boundary. It needs to say, this is I, me, and this is the other. Without the boundary, it cannot sustain its sense of identity. So it needs to feel better than or superior to somebody else. The boundary around the ego needs some kind of enemy, the other. People have, I forgot to mention, an important part of conceptual identity for many people is also collective identity. It's not just personal. You also take things from the collective, the country where you live, or your religion, whatever it may be, or your political persuasion, and that becomes part of your identity, your conceptual identity, of a collective identity. It could also be race. If you're a racist, then you identify with your race as superior than another race, another conceptual identity. Religion can be an important part of your conceptual identity too, and what it usually means, my religion is the only one that is true and all the others are false. When you hear that, it's a clear sign that it is the ego speaking. The ego has identified with religion, and it needs to pronounce all the others as inferior. only ours, or mine, or our religion is the only true one. All the others are going to hell. We are the only ones who are going to heaven. Well, that's very satisfying to the ego. Wow, I am one of the few chosen ones. Look at me. Oh, it's wonderful. But then you need others that disagree with you, because without the others you cannot sustain your conceptual identity. If the others don't disagree, then your identity becomes fluid and dissolves. So you need the others who have opposite interpretations of your same religion or some other religion, and they are your enemy because they are probably controlled by the devil. And so that's them. Politically, you can do it too. You have a political system that pronounces the other as not just inferior, as actually evil. That's all kinds of collective identities. Any kind of prejudice that people have is to do with conceptual identity. Race is one that many people have. If you don't have much else in your life, you could identify with your race and see, okay, our race is the greatest and all the others are inferior. And then that gives you your sense of identity. Now, you can see how you need the other. In an imaginary scenario, let's say a person who is a racist, one morning he or she wakes up, not having become a beetle as in Kafka, no. So one morning he or she wakes up, suddenly finds himself on another planet, and then begins to realize that everybody on this planet is exactly the same race as me. There is no other race. In fact, on this planet where this person suddenly finds himself, the word race does not even exist. Because if everybody is the same race and the same skin color, you will not even have a word for race. So the entire identity that was built up on race would collapse immediately. Without the other, it cannot be sustained. You could also say, you can take any example. Let's say you have a noisy Italian sports car, because Italian sports cars are meant to be noisy to attract attention. So you have a Lamborghini, and it's painted red to attract even more attention, and it gives your ego a boost. Look at me. Everybody looking because it's so noisy. And then in another imaginary scenario, the next day you wake up in another dimension, and in this dimension, every human being has the same red Lamborghini or whatever it is. Immediately, your ego cannot use it anymore. It becomes totally meaningless. So then your conceptual identity will then collapse. Without the other, the egoic identity desperately needs the other, who is not different, me, the enemy. It loves its enemies. And that's actually how many wars even start like that. You demonize an entire group of people, make them into an enemy, and then you feel a much stronger sense of identity. Another identity is from a collective, is for people to identify even with their gender, male or female. I'm not sure. Gender has become a problematic thing. I'll put that aside for a moment. Let's just say there's male and female, and in older cultures, is still in some cultures now, an important part for a person's identity is actually their gender. If they are male, for example, they are male, that becomes a very important part of their conceptual sense of self, because what it is implied that male is automatically superior to female. So you already have 50%, you can be a very stupid man, but you have superiority over 50% of the population that is female. No matter how stupid you are, you're a man. In some countries that still operates more or less. So I'm a man. And in some countries also females are conditioned to identify with and act out a particular way of behaving and speaking female. They don't know, it's totally conditioned, it's part of their identity. So I've been talking about the ego, the human ego. One could talk about for hours, but I won't go on and on. You're all familiar with the ego because at some point before you went through a spiritual awakening, you also had an ego. So it all comes back to conceptual identity. Is that who I am? Is that all there is to me? Or is there maybe a dimension to who I am that I have never known, I'm not aware of at all? Is there more? Or am I just this ego entity, the I? And that's why we are here. We need to, part of awakening to this dimension that exists in every human being, the possibility of realizing that there is in you the potential of a deeper dimension of consciousness in every human. And the discovery of this deeper dimension of consciousness in every human is the most important part of your life journey here on this planet. If any question comes into your mind right now, please realize that it is irrelevant. And please realize that it is an attempt of your mind to obstruct your practice of presence. Occasionally I may say something just to point you back to it, because there is always the possibility that you may drift off into thinking. It's also quite helpful, as you are aware of being conscious, to be aware at the same time that you are breathing, to feel the breath going in and out, and at the same time be the consciousness, the presence. thoughts are not important right now. Even if they pretend to be. Don't be concerned if an occasional ripple of thought floats around the surface of your consciousness. Not a problem. So when you go into a meditation like this, it can become very deep so that there's consciousness left, pure consciousness. And then as you open your eyes again, listen, look around, begin to perceive externals again, it's still in the background. Life is difficult, but when you know that life is difficult and you fully come to terms with the fact that life is difficult, it's not difficult anymore, because the greatest difficulty is the mental resistance to things that arise and the underlying assumption that they should not. So once you have then a surrendered relationship with the present moment, because everything arises in the present moment, then it's not really that difficult anymore, and you can, even in the midst of turmoil, still be connected with the realm of being within yourself. So there's always a core of stillness, if only in the background. And no matter what happens, that core of stillness is there, if we want to call it stillness. It's also, as we saw, and as you know, it's also the source of satisfaction, where true satisfaction or a true sense of well-being that goes beyond physical well-being, a true sense of well-being comes from. It's the transcendent dimension. So life will challenge you with its difficulties, small and big. Small happen probably every day in some form. So you don't get upset anymore when things don't go according to plan. You don't get upset and complain or irritated or angry when people don't behave the way they should behave. And that makes it so much easier when you no longer demand that these things should not be the way they are. They shouldn't cancel flights. Weather shouldn't be in such a way that they can't fly anymore. The body shouldn't get old. Nobody should have catch an illness. Now, a lot of illnesses are produced, or you're much more prone to have an illness if your mind is very dysfunctional, because that lowers the physical resistance. It affects the body. What the mind does obviously affects the body. Even mainstream medicine is beginning to recognize your mental emotional state affects your physical state. So if your mental emotional state is very dysfunctional, your body's resistance to illness decreases. The likelihood increases that you catch something. There are other causes of illness, so nobody can be totally free and say, I'm never going to be ill. The body is a physical vehicle with a certain lifespan, and as it approaches the later stages of its lifespan, it's just like an old car. Things start to go wrong with it. It's another form, and the older your car gets, the more things need to be replaced, and the time comes when it's just not working anymore. So it will be easier for you to deal with the challenges of life if you actually realize that challenges are good. They force you to awaken. And that's what's happening here. For a long time, challenges, the only thing that challenges do is they make people suffer. And that can go on for a long, long time. I sometimes say everybody has a spiritual teacher, everybody on the planet. For most people, their spiritual teacher is their suffering. Because eventually the suffering brings about an awakening. And then there are a few who are advanced enough, who already have gone through their suffering, and then they come into contact with an actual spiritual teaching in the form of wisdom, tradition, or an actual spiritual teacher, or even in the form of a book. And they suddenly say, oh wow, yes. And then evolution accelerates. So for you, there's already this acceleration, because otherwise the evolution of consciousness is very slow. Evolution works very slowly. And for many humans it's still the case. That's why we repeat the same mistakes, politicians and so on. Haven't they read any history books? Just go back 50 years and then you make the same mistake again. Go back 40 years. So, condemned to repeat the past, this is part of karma. And then you reach that stage where an acceleration begins, and you're all at that stage, which is wonderful. So whenever confronted with a challenge in whatever form, look at it. Be careful that your mind does not weave a whole huge web of useless thinking around it. Then it gets really difficult. And realize most challenges are actually fairly simple. Here's the situation or the person. I can either do something about it, what action is possible now, and with that comes that clear looking. What action is needed now? That presence flows, and presence can become, there can be a presence-inspired doing. Before there is a presence-inspired doing, you need to look at the situation. And when you look not necessarily just visually, but put your awareness on the situation, and there is a time span where you are, in order to access primordial intelligence, which is in the stillness, whenever a situation arises, you look at the situation, and in the looking, which means giving it attention, there is no thinking. There's just an alert looking, facing it. And then, how long that is varies. It could be a few seconds, it could be a minute, it could be 2 minutes, but often a few seconds of giving it alert attention is enough. Then whatever it is needed will come to you. Possible causes of action, and then that's a responding to a situation. Or you look and you realize nothing can be done right now, and that's perfectly fine. And while nothing can be done, you accept what is, and are still connected, and sometimes more deeply connected in the face of even sometimes unpleasant circumstances, more deeply connected with the true source of satisfaction, which you can quickly access if you become friendly with what is. Just becoming friendly with what is, and immediately it's easier to access the source of satisfaction and that which transcends the ego. The ego is sustained by continuous resistance, denial, not it's against it. Whatever it is, I'm against it, and it's usually the present moment, with brief exceptions. So, coming to accept the isness of people and situations, and realizing this situation cannot be otherwise from the way it is. Why not? It should be. No, it can't be, because it already is. The entire universe, the entire history of the universe has brought about, because since everything is connected to everything else, anything that happens is connected to the totality. So the totality of the universe, since the Big Bang, has brought about this event. So that's what is. There's nothing you can do. Then you can do something and take action, yes. But prior to taking action, there's an acceptance of the isness. Then there is an insight into what is possible. And then action, if it is possible, happens. Or there is a realization that nothing is possible, then surrender happens. And in that surrender, you are internally free of the situation. So in that surrender or acceptance, you can sense the satisfaction arising not because something is going well, because it may not be right now, but because you are connected with the source of all satisfaction, all life, and it feels it's fine. You may be trapped somewhere, and it's fine. The mind may tell you, oh, I should be happy because look at all those other people. They are far worse off than me, so I should be happy. So the mind tries to convince you to feel good about yourself, or the mind reads something about gratitude and says, oh, I really should be grateful because look at all those people who are worse off than me. These people who are very old and I'm still relatively okay, not that old. And look at those people who are all ill and I'm still relatively well. And all these people, the poor people around the world, I really should be happy and grateful. That's trying to arrive at something that you cannot really arrive at through thinking, via thought. So the only thing that can make you feel a little bit better about yourself is to say that others are worse off than you. So then you're depending on others being worse off than you to give you a sense of a little bit of happiness. So some people try to arrive at gratitude in that way, but that's not the true way, and that you can't really, there's no depth to that. You don't need any comparison for gratitude to arrive. There needs to be a moment of no thought, and with that moment of no thought, there comes an appreciation of whatever it is. that arises in this moment, an appreciation that has nothing to do with conceptual thinking, although at some point conceptual thought may come in, and then at some point it might say, oh, what a lovely sky, or what a lovely human being he or she is, or some comment about beauty. But at some point that may come in. But the true gratitude and appreciation are really the same thing. They're synonymous. A Buddhist asked me, you talk about gratitude, but I don't believe in God, so who am I grateful to? Because obviously Buddhists don't talk about God or believe in God. Of course, some Buddhists may try to be grateful to the Buddha. Oh, thank you, Buddha, for this. But that's not it. You simply, in that state when there's no thought, there is an appreciation of the aliveness of that, the life that inhabits all forms, even inanimate life forms. There's an alert attention, and with that you perceive, and you hear, you listen, look. There's an innocence of perception in which you're not judging at all, you're just appreciating. You give attention, and that giving of attention is the most precious thing you can bring into this world. That's really what you're here for. You're here to bring consciousness into this dimension. So when you give attention, which is not thought, you give attention, then consciousness flows into this dimension from some other place, some other dimension, so to speak. So you bring from the unmanifested, the source, you bring that into this dimension. And that is the real purpose of human existence, is to be the channel for the opening for consciousness. You're here to bring consciousness. And consciousness is the light of God, the light of the divine. That's why it's sometimes called the light of consciousness. So you're really a channel for that transcendent dimension, the divine, to come. It's better to come into this dimension and thereby transforming it. Without you doing anything, you're not thinking, I am going to transform the world. No. The I that thinks it has to do something is not needed here. And then it happens. So primarily, that's. And the shift then happens when you realize that, is that your purpose, your life purpose in any situation is not really the surface of that situation, whatever is happening there. There's a deeper and true purpose in any situation. It's very easy to forget that, so that you believe that what really matters is the actual situation that you're dealing with, your life situation, your whatever it is, your relationship, any situation that arises in the present moment, any challenge, or whatever it is you do for a living, the work you do, you think, I'm doing it in order to achieve that through it, or not. Well, yes, but that is the relative purpose, but the true absolute purpose is never that. It's to bring, to be the bringer of consciousness into that situation. And
whenever you're being challenged, particularly, it's easy to forget that, and then you think, this is what matters, dealing with it on that surface level. Oh, the primary question needs to be, what is my state of consciousness? And are you able to bring that attention, no matter what happens in your life, face it with that an outflow of attention. And then thinking can happen afterwards if it's needed. It then comes from a different place and will be more intuitive, more inspired, more fresh, more adequate, right for that particular situation rather than old conditioned thinking. So the primary thing is, are you able to dwell in that state where attention can move through you, consciousness? So no matter what your life purpose is for you as a person, on a personal level, you do whatever it is you do. It may be important in the eyes of the world, or it may be not important in the eyes of the world, but that doesn't really matter. What does matter is what state of consciousness you bring to it. And then something that may be unimportant in the eyes of the world may be more important if you bring consciousness to it than a so-called VIP doing what he or she does in the state of unconsciousness. So it is, sometimes it's even what written values are reversed when you look deeply, that a person who is maybe doing a menial job, so-called, may make a more important contribution to human consciousness than somebody who is in VIP and totally absorbed in the mind and in reactivity, and to really a continuation of the problem making, in Eastern terms, producing more karma. And so, of course, in conventional terms, the VIP makes a more important contribution, but in reality, the person who may not be recognized by the world as important may actually be making a more important contribution. So it's, in any situation, then what really matters is not the situation, but your state of consciousness that you bring to it.
Okay. Actually, my question has already been answered.
That often happens.
And I think one day we are going to come here, and once we're all in presence, we won't have any questions for you.
That's true. That would be wonderful.
And you're going to be out of business.
Yes. Yes, that would be wonderful.
So, actually, my question was, could you elaborate on ego versus healthy self-esteem?
Ah, yes. Okay. Eventually, what you call healthy self-esteem, which is a wonderful thing, eventually that is not enough. And as a human being evolves, that healthy self-esteem is no longer satisfying as you grow older, and is transcended. And what takes its place is
healthy, no hyphen self-esteem. The self-esteem, of course, means that you are reasonably satisfied with who you are as a person and the achievements of the person, what the person can do, or what the person knows, or what the person possesses, and you compare what the person can do, abilities, what the person knows, knowledge, or what the person has in terms of possessions. You compare that with others, and you come out favorably. So either you can do more than somebody else or others, just feel better about yourself. I can do this, but they can't. I can, but you can't. Or you have more knowledge. Did you know that this in such and such is such and such a case? You didn't know that? Well, let me tell you. That feels good. You know more. These ignorant people, they don't know anything. Or you have more. How many bedrooms does your house have? 4? Well, we have 11. Do you have an advanced degree? No? I have 2 PhDs. And that's fine. It starts with a child already. It says, look what I can do. I can jump further than you. And that for the child it's fine. There's no point in telling a child, don't do that, because your ego is arising. No, the child has to go through that. And it is better to have healthy self-esteem, as you describe it, as it's usually described, than extremely low self-esteem. I'm no good. Everybody's better than me. I have nothing. Life has treated me unfairly. There's a self-image there also, as there is a self-image in healthy self-esteem. One, of course, is much nicer than the other. It's more pleasant to live with healthy self-esteem than with a low self-esteem, or unhealthy self-esteem, one could call it. But they're both identification with some kind of form. And you compare the form of who I am with the form of others, and you are better, at least in one area, you must be. And that's satisfying, but you're trapped in form, and you're depending on, for your sense of value or worthiness, you're depending on, ultimately, to put it bluntly, others who have less or know less or can do less than you. And that's fine. Doesn't mean you shouldn't strive to do great things or to have things or to know things. But the question is, ultimately, is that a satisfying basis for your sense of who you are? And in the long term, it is not. It is not satisfying. That is why people who are maybe very happy with what they possess, after a while, there's an emptiness that comes, not the spiritual emptiness, a sense of emptiness of what's it all about. And even things you can do, a time may come when you can't do it anymore. Whatever it is that you do that's so great, playing an instrument, the great pianist, wonderful, why not be a great pianist? But if you derive your sense of who you are from that, then one day you find arthritis in your fingers. And who are you now? Or just the agility goes, it's not there anymore. Oh my God, suffering comes. Or you invent the greatest new computer, some computer, I don't know the expressions, but program or whatever it is,
And everybody says this is the greatest ever, but 3 years later or 2 years these things happen very quickly. Somebody else comes with makes yours obsolete, and then you have no new ideas, and there you sit completely devastated because you got from somebody great you've become nobody. But it was all illusion. Because you derived your sense of who you are from something in the world of form, which is fleeting, not reliable, not solid, dreamlike. And so the true self-esteem comes from not identifying with form. Now, whether we even want to call that self-esteem, I don't know. The true sense of worthiness and of power, true power, comes when you realize the formless in yourself, that dimension, and that all power comes from that. But it's not, it goes far beyond the person that you are. And then you are rooted in the formless, so to speak, or you are it, and that there's enormous sense of worthiness in there, but it's not comparative. It's not more than. You see the same worthiness in everyone, even if they don't know it for themselves yet. So there's power, but not more than. There's just the power of life itself. And you know everybody is an expression of that, although they may not know it yet. Everybody. So this is, you transcend conventional self-esteem. And it doesn't mean you lose your sense of worth. It shifts into something much deeper. So every human really is. There may even be some children these days who don't need to go through the egoic stage anymore. That is possible. But traditionally, and humans had to go, and many probably still have to go through the stage where they identify with form, develop some self-esteem, do something that you feel good about, you can do it, and then comes the time going beyond. Except perhaps, as I said, some advanced souls who may be coming into this world, already in this world as children, who don't even need to identify with that anymore. A question that comes from there also is, if a person has low self-esteem, in other words, a mental image of not good enough, then does that person have to go through the stage of healthy self-esteem before they can transcend it altogether? I don't know. I haven't tried it enough with enough people. It may well be that the unhealthy self-esteem, if it leads to a state of suffering, great suffering, you may be able to, with the help of a teacher, go from there to no self. Because the way from unhappiness or suffering to transcendence is easier than the way from superficial happiness to transcendence. Superficial happiness keeps you in the dream world for quite a while. It's not that bad. My life, I can't complain. It's not that bad. It's going okay. I'm quite happy, just got a promotion. I'm so happy I just got my annual bonus from my Wall Street bank. Great, I'm doing great. Yeah. So from there, the transcendence is not directly from Wall Street, probably not. But if you go from Wall Street to prison,
much easier.